I really don't have any money or treasures. Please, no dangerous tricks. It's foolish to mess up your life for a quick buck, I said. It's okay, I'm not that bad of a person, he replied. Somehow, his naive response left me feeling deflated. Is it already 8 o'clock? I stood up from the bench where I had been sitting idly. The summer sky was bright, the evenings long. Perhaps nowadays couples are more inclined to limit the number of children they have. This is reflected in the observation that there were more elderly individuals than children in the park. Those seniors were probably heading home now. I, too, decided to head to the supermarket for dinner. My name is Mike Johnson, a nondescript middle-aged man of 58. The local supermarket is open until 10 p.m. Checking the discounted groceries first has become my habit. As I walked towards the supermarket through the shopping district, someone called out from behind me, Excuse me, excuse me. I glanced sideways to see a skinny boy standing there, wearing a worn-out t-shirt, knee-length shorts, and sandals. He was taller than me, even though I'm not even 5'7", but extremely skinny. Those yellow sandals looked familiar. I guess he was at the park, wasn't he? I was thinking that his legs resembled those of a chicken. What's up? Actually, yes, I don't have any money. These kinds of kids show up from time to time. I've run into them twice at the bus terminal. They want to go home but don't have the money. Can you just lend me $1? He asked. Reluctantly, I pulled out a $5 bill from my pocket and handed it over, only to watch him dash off and start begging for money from someone else in a different spot. Thinking it was the same old story, I asked, You need it for the train fare. He shook his head slightly. What? You're hungry this time? He nodded affirmatively. A runaway kid. Oh, it's summer break after all. Well, can't be helped. Want to grab some supper? I liked his idea of filling his stomach rather than just asking for money, so we went to the supermarket together, and I let him pick a meal from the price-down shelves. Without hesitation, he chose a grilled beef meal set. Definitely a choice of the youth. I put it in the supermarket basket, did a quick round of the store, adding a few more items, then checked out. It was quite dark by then. Got somewhere to go. I offered him the meal pack, but he just looked down, not taking it. What? You really did run away from home. Well, you can eat at my place for now. Is that okay? His voice sounded genuinely happy, which surprised me. How did you get here? Live nearby. No, just got off a bus, really. Summer nights in the park might not be cold, but they're buddy, and I've been bitten all over already. You've been sleeping outside. It's been 3 days. I sighed and headed towards my apartment. Look, I'm fine with letting you in, but I really don't have any money or treasures. No dangerous stuff, okay? You hear about it all the time. Someone gets caught for stealing a measly $78. It's a shame for the victim whose life is taken over such a trivial amount, and it's foolish to ruin your life over petty cash. It's okay. I'm not that kind of bad person. I saw you petting a cat in the park earlier and thought you seemed like a good guy. His naive response made me feel somewhat deflated. Well, if he had dyed hair, piercings, or tattoos and looked like a gang member, I probably would have just given him the meal and run, but he seemed not too streetwise, so I decided to feed him at least. He probably ran out without even bringing his wallet or phone, so he likely headed back soon. My apartment was sweltering. I just turned on the AC, so I told him to wait a bit. No, actually, go take a shower first. You haven't bathed, have you? When he took off his sandals, his feet were completely covered with dirt. Make sure to wash your entire body, I said, and the boy obediently followed. I handed him my worn summer pajamas while I tidied up the room a bit. All right, let's eat. We sat across from each other at a small table in my one-room apartment, with the store-bought meal between us. I laid out some fried chicken I had just bought along with some leftovers for sides. Do you want some of my grilled beef? Come on, eat up. You wanted it, didn't you? There's plenty more where that came from. Join me if this is okay with you, I said, offering him some stir-fried veggies and grilled ham, too. Are you living alone, sir? Yeah, that's right. That's probably why I can bring a stranger like you here. Imagine if there was a wife or a daughter of age here. I'd be in trouble, too. That makes sense. He seemed genuinely convinced, and then started eating heartily. I regret not buying more food for him when I saw his voracious appetite. Upon seeing his satisfaction, I finally began to inquire about his background. So, can you at least tell me your name? It's Josh Taylor. Josh, that's a good name. You a high schooler? Yeah, sort of. What do you mean, sort of? I want to quit school. Bullying. No, it's just that I'm not much for studying, he said with an embarrassed chuckle. Well, I guess it makes sense to get sick of school when you spend most of your day there studying and you hate studying, right? I just want to quit studying and start working. Working a night shift at a convenience store seems to pay pretty well. Listening further, it seemed that Josh's mother was very keen on education, insisting on more study with tutors. It must be because it's summer break, and she thinks it's the best time for it. Sometimes I wonder, what's the point of all the studying? If working gets you money, then that's good enough for me. I don't have any desire to outdo others or climb the career ladder or anything. Well, if you only look at what's right in front of you, that might seem right. But think about it. School isn't just about studying. It's a valuable place where you can meet peers your age and make connections. Wait till you get out into society, all about hierarchies. Even if you have colleagues, once you quit, that's it. School ends with graduation, but work ends with resignation. It's hard to keep in touch with people you used to be close with after you leave. If you quit school, you think you'll want to meet up with your current friends by the time you're my age? Making new friends doesn't happen often. How old are you, sir? I am 58. So you have 2 more years till retirement, huh? No, I'm currently unemployed. What? I was at a factory, but they asked me to take early retirement. Sounds nice, but it's just a nice way of saying they wanted me to kick out. Considering the economic situation, they probably wanted to keep only the younger workers. If I'd have been a college graduate, well, I probably wouldn't have been working at such a small factory in the first place. But things might have been different. That factory had a clear employment policy. High school grads or less on the floor, college grads in the office. It was mostly us older folks on the floor who got cut. Is college really that great? I don't know, maybe, I said, and Taylor smiled happily. I wasn't a great student, but it's not like I didn't want to go to college. We just couldn't afford it. I had to start working early to help my parents out. Even now, I wonder what it would have been like if I had gone. Eventually, everyone has to work. Seeing my friends enjoy their college life while I was working was pretty tough. If you have the chance to go, you should. Once you start earning money, it's hard to give that up to go back to learning. I'm from the countryside. Back in my day, even high school grads could find work in the city. The pay was better than in the countryside, and there were dorms, so I didn't have trouble making ends meet. I entered society because my dad failed in his business, and the retail store he ran went under, leaving us with debt to pay off. I didn't waste money and sent a fixed amount back to my parents every month. It was years later when I found out that the money I sent was actually being used for investment. To me, the idea of making huge wealth in stock investment is a gamble, especially if you are a beginner. The debt didn't decrease, and I was exhausted. I yelled at my father, asking what he thought my life was, and shed tears of frustration while my mother cried and apologized beside him. My father just sulked and cursed, and then my father fell. Even as he lay in bed, my mother and I worked to pay off the debt. If my mother hadn't married such a man, she could have had a happier life. I always thought that with the concept of equality in employment widely accepted, women could earn as much as men. If my mother had lived in such times and worked, she wouldn't have stayed with a man like my father, being tied down by a marriage contract, burdened with unrelated debt, caring for him when he was sick, and cooking and feeding him. If I were a woman, I wouldn't marry a man like my father. And if marrying meant making someone go through such hardship, I wouldn't marry at all. That's what I thought. When my father passed away, to be honest, I felt a deep relief. Do you ever wonder why you were born into this family? That's quite a good question. I took a sip of my beer and handed Taylor, who had been listening intently, the last can of soda from the fridge. I always wondered that. Why was I born into this family? Taylor's family has been running a company since his grandfather's time. Now his mother is in charge, but they plan to eventually pass it on to Taylor. For that, A certain level of education and ability is required. It seems they're desperate to send him to a good school for this reason. I'm grateful for being born into this family and not having to want for anything. But that doesn't mean inheriting the business is the only path for me, right? I'm not interested in a pharmaceutical company, and I don't like studying. Do you have something else you'd want to do? Not yet. But isn't it too much for even my parents to say this is the only way? You must have hated it too, having the money you earned used by your dad for repayments. Well, yes, but it's a completely different situation, isn't it? I was burdened with my parents' failures, but Taylor has hoped to continue a legacy of success. You know the golden eggs? A farmer becomes greedy and kills the goose that lays golden eggs in the hope of finding all the gold at once. However, upon killing the goose, the farmer finds there are no golden eggs inside, and he loses the source of his wealth altogether. That's an incredibly old tale. I don't really get it. Ha ha, I guess young people these days don't know those old stories. Well, the moral is that greed can lead to losing valuable and sustainable sources of wealth. My dad was poor and dreamed of striking it rich through investments. There are those in the world who succeed that way, right? Yes, people dream of it. That's why they invest and gamble. But I believe you can't change fate. There are those born to succeed and those meant to live a steady life. Clearly, my dad was the latter. If he had just worked steadily without getting greedy, that would have been enough. Neither I nor my mom wanted to be rich. We just wanted to live a normal life every day. If going to college was too hard on that lifestyle, I would have been more understanding. It's reaching for something not meant for you that keeps things from working out. I feel the same. I'd be fine with just living normally every day, not having to inherit the company and make a lot of money. If I could just earn enough for daily expenses with a part-time job, that's because you've lived a stable life. What if you were living off part-time jobs and got sick? Living paycheck to paycheck won't last. Life is unpredictable. If you are a regular employee at a good company, you could take paid leave and still get your salary and get severance pay when you retire. It's not about the money right now. In the end, what people want is stability. Stability. Temporary happiness isn't true happiness. Taylor looked like he wanted to say something, glancing at me, looking at the clock. The last train had already gone. Are you really planning not to go home tonight? Could I stay over? With a somewhat apologetic voice, Taylor asked, and I said, one condition. Before taking him outside, I made him call his family from a payphone. I could have allowed him to use my cell phone, but I wanted to avoid getting into trouble. What if his parents misunderstood me and accused me of kidnapping or something? It's no joke. Yeah, it's okay. I'm at a friend's place. I'll come home, I will, but I just need some time to think alone right now. The voice coming from the phone booth wasn't yelling or speaking with resentment, making me think he wasn't a bad kid after all. I'm going to look for a job tomorrow, so you do whatever you like. Take your time to think about your future. With that, we went to sleep. Honestly, I wasn't struggling with living expenses for the next day, so I thought about taking it easy for a bit. I had no specific reason to hustle, and both working and living were becoming a bother. But I couldn't show that kind of attitude in front of Taylor. Driven by a sense of duty, I went to the state employment office the next day and ended up getting the job right away. Actually, I could have pretended to look for work while I stayed at the shopping center or somewhere to spend time in cool, comfortable temperatures. I couldn't help laughing at my own innocence. What? You got a job already? That's amazing. When I got back, Taylor greeted me. While he was waiting for me, he cooked fried rice using leftover ingredients. I had left a $20 bill for the bus fare when I left, but it was still there untouched. Isn't it hard to find a job at your age? It's a blessing to have work at my age, but it's as if they're saying don't just sit around because you're old. Go work. There are even older folks at the new job. Is that why you bought flowers? I had come home with a bouquet of flowers, totally uncharacteristic of me. No, they're for an offering. Saying that, I placed the unwrapped bouquet in a glass vase and set it beside my wife's photo on the dresser. Your wife? Taylor looked closely at the photo. Today is her death anniversary. She looks young. 5 years ago. She was 5 years younger than me, so she was 48, sensing the somber mood. Taylor quickly urged me to sit down and offered me the meal. Despite being a runaway, he seemed sensitive to others' feelings, almost like he was well raised. I noticed he had folded the laundry, the bedding was neatly made, and he had cleaned and organized the place. "What kind of job are you going to do?" "Forklift operator, warehouse organization." "You can operate a forklift?" "It's the only license I have aside from my driver's license. I worked in a warehouse without air conditioning, which was tough, so I quit. But having a certification really does make a difference." I took up an offer for an interview at a warehouse that boasted air conditioning, and just like that, got the job. That's why anything's a waste. Maybe you won't use math formulas in daily life, but that diploma is proof you've learned and mastered things. Even if you don't know what they are for, it's proof of your diligence and honesty. Taylor made a face as if to say, "Is that so?" But listening to my parents, it sounds like inheriting the company means I won't have to struggle or worry about money. Don't you wish for that? It feels like there's no dream in that. That's something you can say because you've never struggled for money. Do you know what's good about having money? Buying nice things, eating good food, that's part of it. But it's also about being able to do a lot for others. If I were penniless, I wouldn't be buying supper for a kid I don't know. And if I had more money, maybe I'd have taken you out for steak. There are plenty of people with money who wouldn't do that. Exactly, so it's not just about having money, but life is tough without it, even if you live righteously. I know that all too well because I've been there. Saying that, I looked at a photo of my wife in front of me. It was taken when we went to a rose garden. She looked happy with a genuine smile, even though her life wasn't that easy. "How did you meet your wife?" she asked. "She worked at a diner I used to frequent. She was brisk, attentive, and had a good nature about her. I started going there not for the food, but to see her. With a meal prepared by someone else and a beer in hand, I found myself talking more than usual, perhaps because of my wife's monthly anniversary. She was raised in an orphanage, never knowing her parents. She grew up there until high school, then ventured out into society alone. Just like me, she is like me. I want to live a peaceful and worry-free life, that's all. To fulfill that modest wish, we worked hard, moved out of the dorm, rented an apartment, and she changed jobs to escape a harsh and sneaky environment. But my wife was young. She tried spending money on cosmetics and beauty treatments that, looking back, seemed to have no effect. Furthermore, she lent money to friends, but the money never returned. She even bought a crystal ball, believing it would bring good fortune. I remember the scene when she laughed about the result of never-ending desires. By the time we met, my wife was already 40, and we both felt deeply that neither a windfall nor a dramatic turnaround was in our future. Only a steady life could promise stability. Attracted by her grounded and solid nature, I proposed but didn't get the answer I hoped for. "Not because there's someone else, but because I don't think I'm worthy," she said. I didn't care that she was raised in an orphanage. In fact, the absence of a parent like mine, who could potentially mess up a child's life, seemed like no obstacle at all. We both hesitated because of our age. I wondered if she had children who opposed our marriage, but I'd avoided pushing the topic, fearing it would only distance us further. I thought persisting in getting married would only cause damage to our relationship. Thus, I told her that I wouldn't mind marriage. I just wanted to continue our relationship. So we maintained a relationship resembling that of longtime friends, enjoying talking over a cup of coffee together. Being in my mid-40s, I no longer harbored a strong desire for marriage or having children, so I was content with how things were. My love was for her, not for the things that might come with it. I thought that even though I was 5 years older than her, I had no assets to leave her if tomorrow never came. If I insisted on getting married and she left me, then it would be better to cherish our time together as it is. Out of the blue, she got sick. She had been suffering from kidney disease before we met. At that time, her condition was already advanced, and she would be subject to dialysis within 2 to 3 years. But she didn't hope to extend her life. She chose to live without regular hospital visits, relying on a diet she managed on her own. The topic of marriage blocked her from revealing her illness. She told me she was troubled by this thought. Why didn't she tell me? I questioned myself. What had I never noticed? As soon as I learned, a letter to dialysis thrice weekly, 4 hours per treatment. Her doctor mentioned kidney transplantation as an option. But she had no family. That's why she had given up on that option. Then I told her doctor that I was willing to be a donor. However, there were some issues. As a result of years of an unhealthy lifestyle, including alcohol intake, smoking, a fast food-based diet, and lack of exercise, my weight was far beyond the age. I hadn't been going for regular checkups and hadn't paid attention to my health, but my blood pressure and blood sugar levels far exceeded the criteria for being a living kidney donor. I was told that being a donor entails losing one kidney and requires being healthy enough to predict a low probability of developing end-stage renal failure after donation. From there, I started exercising diligently, changed my diet, and worked on getting in shape. The doctor told me to lose 22 pounds. Rapid weight loss could harm the body and prove counterproductive, but I couldn't suppress my urgency. It took me 6 months to achieve the weight loss and undergo the transplant, possibly the most purposeful I'd ever felt in my life. It gave me a greater sense of accomplishment than even when I had finished paying my parents' debt. Just as I thought we should cherish each other and live on, my wife caught the flu and passed away unexpectedly. We had been warned to be careful about infections, but I never imagined she would get the flu in the middle of summer. I'm sorry. Maybe we're just fated to have complicated lives. That's what I thought then. I lost the will to live, but I have to live a long life. If I'm gone, there will be no one to memorialize my wife. That's my purpose in life now. I learned a lot in this short life despite all the trouble caused when my dad got sick. I couldn't understand why my mom nursed and took care of him, but I realized it's because of love. Even with my good-for-nothing dad, my mom must have seen something in him. When I thought I wouldn't mind giving up a kidney, I understood that. But it's a shame. After all that, my wife always said she didn't want me to sacrifice for her sake. But I'm glad I could donate. I'm gradually beginning to see it as a blessing that her passing wasn't due to kidney issues. It was our choice, a way for us as a couple to find happiness. Looking back, it felt like a genuine conversation between a couple. If I had known this was going to happen, I would have taken her to beautiful places, treated her to fine dining. No, my biggest regret is not realizing anything. Without a word, Taylor poured the remaining beer, and I emptied the glass. Shall we sleep? Yes. The room was filled with the scent of lilies. Taylor seemed sympathetic to my somber story, showing no signs of leaving even after 3 days. You should live your own life instead of fussing over me, sir. You just started your job. It must be tough. I can cook and wait for you. That makes it easier, right? He said. Yesterday, we went to the supermarket together, and he said he could make curry, so we bought the ingredients. He even added chocolate as a secret ingredient. Maybe he used to cook with his parents. Their relationship must not be that bad. When I came home from work, the room was full of the aroma of curry. In front of my wife's photo were candles and the curry he cooked. Probably his family used to make offerings at the altar every morning. What a respectable family he comes from. I was impressed. While eating, I was asked about how things were going at work, so I shared some of my workplace experiences, like operating the lift. The news about a fireworks festival was playing on the TV. Taylor, you're young. Instead of hanging out with an old guy like me, you should go see the fireworks with someone your age. And you, did you ever take her on fancy dates? That's why you date when you're young. You might think growing older makes you an adult, but without experience, you just age physically while remaining ignorant. Experience both studying and dating while you're young. Get into college, meet lots of nice girls, make friends you get along with. Once you enter society, all men become rivals or colleagues. And girls these days, they earn their own money, so they won't bother with half-hearted guys. What will you do if you end up living alone like me? You have the privileged title of heir. What's left is to build various connections and gain the experience to discern good people. The next day, Taylor invited me to see the fireworks at the riverbank. We had our meal at a stall and had an odd date between a middle-aged man and a runaway boy. Fireworks are strange, aren't they? They're so bright and beautiful while they last, but why do they leave you feeling so empty afterward? Taylor said after buying ice cream and beer at the convenience store. Fireworks are said to have a meaning of memorial service. I replied. When I got out of the shower, my beer and ice cream were placed next to me. He ate the ice cream after I told him to eat it before it melts. We talked about going to see the fireworks together next year. She even prepared a sundress. My wife was good at sewing and made my matching shirt. Wow, did you try it on? No, she passed away before showing it to me. I haven't even unfolded it. That's not good, sir. You have to thank her for working hard to sew it for you. I had tucked it away in the closet and forgotten about it. I just remembered now. Prompted by Taylor, I opened the top closet and pulled out a flat box, which Emily repurposed from a department store box. It was the perfect size for the shirt. After Emily passed away and I was sorting through her belongings, I found clothes wrapped in parchment paper. As I unwrapped them, they turned out to be my shirt. It was too painful to look further, so I simply wrapped it back up and stored it in the box. I suppose I tried to open it because I wasn't alone. Taylor was there. When I opened the box, I found a package just as it was then. As I unwrapped them, Taylor stood up and spread out the shirt. A letter fell out softly. What's this? You haven't read this? Isn't this a letter from your wife, Emily? You never unfolded the shirt. I don't even know how to fold it back. Look, it's a letter from your wife, he said, pointing to the familiar handwriting addressed to Mikey on the envelope. It was a letter from my wife that I hadn't seen for 5 years. My hands were shaking so much that I could hardly open the envelope properly. Let me read it for you, Taylor offered, swiftly opening the envelope and unfolding the letter. To Mikey, I finally finished your shirt. It's the first thing I'd ever made for someone else, not for selling. With every stitch, I sewed in my gratitude, saying thank you for the happiness. I always wondered what the purpose of my life was, especially after being abandoned by my parents. Living without knowing, just surviving because I had to. Meeting you made me happy to be alive for the first time. I even lost the hatred for my parents who abandoned me because if I hadn't been born, I wouldn't have this life. Having someone to come home to, someone to cook for, someone to live with, I'm truly grateful. I wonder if I could live healthily after the surgery. We have to live healthily together. For Mikey, who's undergoing surgery for me, I have to get better. But no matter how my life ends, I have no regrets. It was a happy life because I met you. I sewed these shirts with all those feelings so you won't forget them. Emily Taylor's voice trembled as he read. I cried out loud. The sound of fireworks could be heard in the distance, feeling pathetic for not even being able to unfold the shirts my wife had put so much care into because of my grief. Though I was grateful for this unexpected connection that brought it to light, the next day when I returned from work, Taylor was gone. In a situation where I had no memo pad or notebook, he found a way to leave a message on the wall calendar, written with a marker. It said, Uncle, thanks for everything. I'll come back, so wait for me. Alone again, the room felt gentle somehow. How frustrated she must have been with me for never realizing her love and gratitude. I felt a sense of liberation in my heart. My wife's smiling face in the photo seemed to shine even brighter. I don't know what changes Taylor went through, but I hope he walks a life without regrets like Emily did. Eggs and stir-fry Taylor made were placed in front of Emily, along with rice. Today comes with sides. Eat up, I said after showering. Then there was a knock on the apartment door. Had Taylor come back in haste? I opened the door to find a middle-aged woman I'd never seen before, yet somehow she felt familiar. Uncle, it's me. Let me in, Taylor called from behind. I let him in. I was grateful that Taylor had tidied up the room. As I let the woman into the room, she immediately stood in front of my wife's photo and began to cry. Suddenly, Mom, Taylor looked at both of us, confused. The woman lowered her voice and turned towards me, her demeanor calm. She introduced herself as Samantha, Taylor's mother, and revealed that she was also the adopted daughter of the Taylor. On his deathbed, her father revealed that she had a younger sister. Apologizing for not being able to bring them up together, she explained that the conversation had happened last year. Since then, she had been desperately searching for her sister, only to discover that the child welfare facility she had been in no longer existed. Indeed, the orphanage where Emily had stayed had closed 2 years ago due to the aging of the building. So, you're Emily's sister? Samantha asked. Uncle, remember the letter? It had its name on it. That's how I figured it out. The letter from my wife was indeed signed from Emily. I stared at the woman in front of me once again. Yes, the feeling of familiarity was because she bore a resemblance to my wife. From the first time he saw the photo, Taylor seemed to sense something. He had heard his mother's stories about searching for her sister. When I mentioned that Emily was being raised in an orphanage, he gradually became convinced that his mother and Emily were sisters. Samantha showed me a photo of the two sisters taken at the orphanage, Emily at 1 year old and Samantha at 2. When the adopted parents took them in, it was suggested that they be adopted as sisters, but that was considered difficult. The fact that Samantha was in good health compared to her sickly sister, who was my wife, Emily, and that they shared the same blood type as their adoptive parents sealed their fate. Holding my wife's dress and letter, Samantha cried for a long time. The adopted parents had lost a son but didn't want another boy because they were afraid they might compare the latest one to the adopted one, so they preferred a girl. Samantha was raised to be the heir. She felt the same pressure as Taylor does now, as well as a way of protesting. She ignored potential suitors whom her parents picked for her. Consequently, she fell in love with a man whom she could not marry and had Taylor out of wedlock. Initially, her parents weren't happy with her decision to become a single mom, but once they met Taylor, they loved him so much. Perhaps Taylor mended the pain of losing their son. A few years ago, her adopted mother began showing symptoms of dementia and was transferred to a nursing home. Then last year, her adoptive father told the truth on his deathbed. Feeling obligated to repay her parents' kindness, she was determined to raise her son to be a decent man. However, she struggled and was concerned about imposing the same pressures she felt on Taylor. Frequent clashes between mother and son led to Taylor's recent departure. Now, I work at Samantha's company warehouse, driving for Cliffs. I was offered an office job, but I chose this because I had the license. It's a bright warehouse with air conditioning, a great environment. Samantha insisted that she wanted to fulfill what her sister Emily could not do and even provided me with an apartment, which made me feel overwhelmed to accept. However, I could not say anything because Samantha mentioned that her sister Emily also stayed there. My wife, who used to be on the apartment's dresser, is now smiling inside a splendid altar. Perhaps all these encounters were thanks to my wife on the anniversary of her passing. Samantha and Taylor came with baskets of flowers and fruit. The three of us gathered around the dining table, sharing memories. Taylor seems to have turned a new leaf, dedicating himself to his studies. "Uncle, when I take over this company in the future, I'll invest more in welfare projects to help people," he said. "If you got a lot, you can give a lot. I'm fortunate, so I want to use that to help others." He seems to have grown taller this summer, becoming more dependable. Having someone to watch over has added joy to my life, and I'm grateful to live each day with this feeling.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? Alright, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using therein. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.